Thursday the 13th, this is Morning Express. Ngunjiru joins me for our press review this morning. And we begin with the Standard newspaper. And Uhuru Ruto battled with ICC over witness who took off. So we have several witnesses here. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Sophia.
That is a place to begin.
Yes.
So we have AG in The Hague to tell ICC that Kenya will not help deliver 7 key witnesses who dropped out of DP's case or hand over Kenyatta's financial records. The prosecution has wanted those records.
Yeah.
And AG is said to will argue that it's not upon them to force anybody to testify.
And he does actually have a point.
Yeah.
When you read up on the stories about these 7 witnesses, one of the things you realize is that the government wasn't involved anywhere along the way in getting them to the point where they I mean, when I was just reading one of the stories where one guy was in a hotel room and then he was left after they had filled in his visa application,
right,
and the next day when they came he wasn't there. He had taken off. So it does reek a bit of desperation from the prosecution,
right,
to be actually getting the government to now start chasing up after witnesses that the government was not involved in procuring. And I also, I mean, the AG quoted the Rome Statute, where actually you cannot compel a witness to go and give evidence, to go and give testimony at the ICC. It has to be a voluntary basis.
Yeah.
But you can actually feel also the prosecutor's frustration. So you've got all these guys who had lined up, you had all your ducks in a row, and then they're just falling off by themselves.
Completely.
And you want to point your finger at someone. And the easiest people here become government. But I am on the AG side on this one. It is actually not in the government's
prerogative. It's not up to them.
It's not up to them to get you the witnesses that need to.
Yeah,
Because the prosecution built this case by themselves, without support, without the support. This was not something that they did jointly with government.
Yeah.
Government created an environment for them to actually do the investigations and identify their witnesses and deliver them. If something happens in between there, you cannot point fingers at the government, about it.
And it will also be interesting to hear what he'll argue in as far as the financial records of the president are concerned. They've asked for this for a very long time. Now they're really coming down to the point of saying he's head of government, the government that has been frustrating our efforts. Our case is in the crumbles.
But you see, that's also something else that they've been asking for this financial records for 2 years.
Right.
Uhuru has been president for 10 months. And the AG's argument is there's a process through which you follow
to get
this, because this is not something that you can't get. But the issue is that, and I think at some point they indicated, everybody, even the defense, Uhuru's defense people indicated that we don't have a problem giving you them records, but you must follow the process, meaning you must come to, you must instigate a process in the Kenyan court to ask or get the ICC to order for those records to be done. But you can't ask for them directly and then say they're not being given to you, because that there's a process of that defends the rights of anyone, including a suspect. Meaning you can't walk into Safaricom today and ask them to give you my phone records because you have a case. You have to go through a court process. You can't go to the bank today and ask them to give you my financial records.
Right.
You need to go to the court, get a court order, and then get them. And that's what they're being told to do. Follow the procedures about how to get these financial records.
Right, and you can read more about that story on page 4 and 5 in the Standard. Another one that's on the front page, regional politics, talks between Raila and Coast MPs end without answers. So the Coast MPs have some demands.
Coast MPs are not happy.
Yeah.
What has been happening in ODM, there's been this narrative about molds that just got a life of its own and became something else. So you've had people fingers being pointed at everyone, from Ababu to everybody who doesn't seem to be fitting within the
that's having conversations with the other side.
Yes, or no, it's actually ODM is going through elections in another 14, 15, 18 days. So what's been happening is the assumption that there's a preferred list of candidates. Now, if you do not fit within those lists of candidates and you're still insisting you want to run, what is being used to fight you is to call you a mole or a Jubilee friend or something.
Sympathizer.
And in politics, in a Kenyan setting where you're working in parliament together, you have, like I was just reading, Johnson Sakaja introduced a private bill on youth procurement, and it was seconded by David Ochieng. who is, now in those kind of relationships, you can't say that somebody, because at some point they worked with somebody
So
from
and so,
Jubilee or
yeah.
from CORD, that means that they are the sympathizers of the other side. But now that is the argument that is now starting to hurt ODM quite a bit, because this narrative of people who don't necessarily agree with the party mainstream conversations being branded as moles didn't just start recently. It's been around. It's just that now it's coming out prominently because it's been used to fight Ababu. It's been used to fight certain people, and now it was used to fight what is it called? This guy from the coast. One of the MP, Mungaro.
Yes, Mungaro.
And what has happened is now Coast MPs have said, no, you can't point fingers at Mungaro as the person who was behind the dismal failure of the party.
Okay.
So it's...
We'll wait to see how this ODM politics unfold.
Yes.
There's a story here. It's on a different headline picture of the Daily Nation, but in the Standard, Uhuru names Rongo MP envoy to South Sudan. It was breaking news yesterday.
It was breaking news yesterday, yes.
Yeah, so... What did you make of that appointment?
Connecting it to the story we've just we've just been discussing about ODM.
Yeah,
there are going to be a lot of people who are going to be raising eyebrows and saying, "Look, now you see, we always said," because Honorable Dalmas Otieno was one of the MPs who came out very strongly
and said he was
unhappy with how he was asked not to run.
Right.
Now, for him to have been made a special envoy to South Sudan, to some people to be, there you are.
See, we told
you there was something about this guy. But then I guess also, I think personally I would be congratulating the president and Dalmas Otieno, because South Sudan is not a partisan position.
Correct.
The seeking peace in South Sudan is not something that is a Jubilee issue or a CORD issue. This is something I think all Kenyans want to get sorted out. And the fact that the president decided to get somebody from the other political divide to actually go and represent Kenya it's a really big thing. And it's something that we should all be congratulating. But then I guess local politics will keep interfering with
and
how we look at things.
More of that, more of positions and working together beyond what we disagree on.
Yes.
Ideology needs at some point to really just stand tall.
Yes.
And I'm sure there are things both sides can agree on. Not every day the petty politics. I mean, that is exhausting, even for a country.
And South Sudan, as I said, is a big thing for Kenya. It's not, you cannot take a party position on South Sudan.
Right.
You can't say that there's no party position on South Sudan.
It's the right thing to do.
This was a brilliant decision that was made.
How are you celebrating Valentine's tomorrow, Ngunjiru?
I am still thinking about
because in Nairobi.
Now I'm on TV, but
because on page 3,
be nice and quiet.
The Standard is talking about oops, love heart, City Hall hikes flowers vending charges ahead of Lovers' Day. So tomorrow, don't buy your flowers from.
Yes, but then I want to say, like a lot of people I see saying, I mean, for me, Valentine is something I do more than once a year. So I don't really need an excuse.
No, but tomorrow is a special day. It's like that day where you just take it to the next level. Ngunjiru.
But you see, a lot of us make a lot of days special, not just Valentine.
When
There's just some guys
every day special, it's no longer special. That's why there's this one day when even despite the other,
I think
pockets of specialness.
Valentine is made for people who need a reason.
What do you mean who need a reason?
See, there's some people who will not do some stuff. You not buy a flower for your wife until it is Valentine.
Okay.
So if you're the kind of person,
lakini nunua maua.
Aya, sawa.
Sawa. But what do you think about this? They're hiking flower vending charges.
That is county government at work. And I say this because over the years, there's been a lot of florists make a lot of money during this 2-3 days.
All red.
So what has happened is, and this is now where we appreciate and suffer from the county governments that we have.
Yeah.
At county level, you're able to identify where people are making money at local level and tap into it. So now what we're actually seeing is the Nairobi government identifying, last year but one, it was a national government issue, and nobody was going to sit in national government and think, let's figure out how to make money for 2 days.
Right.
But now the county government is looking for every means and every opportunity to make money. And that's why you have the complaint I've just heard on TV about religious leaders in Nyeri being told they're going to pay
for the crusades,
for events. You see now, because crusades are being called events, and because it's an event, then you're supposed to pay. So county governments are going out of their way to look for every opportunity, and Valentine becomes one of those.
One of those.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I'll check with your wife if you bought flowers. Page 6. University lecturer wants Sheng used in primary schools. So this comes after the conversation about using the mother tongue as well.
Yes.
What should we have there?
He's got an interesting argument, because what he's actually saying is, there's been this, I think it was called the Gashadi report at some point, where they suggested that you get the dominant language and you use it to teach children between standard 1 and standard 3. And now that's now where the argument of mother tongue came in. But then he's arguing that in urban centers, we don't have mother tongue.
Right.
We have Sheng. So now in urban centers, if you're going to use mother tongue in rural settings, then pick Sheng in urban centers.
Yes.
Because his argument is that we don't just teach English and Kiswahili in school. You teach sciences, you teach other stuff. And now those things, it might be easier to impart that knowledge using the language that the child is more comfortable in. In up country, it will be mother tongue. In urban, it will be Sheng. So it's a kind of conversation maybe Kenya just needs to keep having, because you cannot pretend that Sheng doesn't happen. You can't pretend.
Yeah.
And I think we just have to come up with a name for the 100 for the Twitter and Facebook language, because that's also totally different.
What would that be? Twitteri?
Facebooki. Guess that.
Daily Nation, of course, more stories inside this standard today, including the extra pull-outs. The Daily Nation today's headline: exposed horrors in public service wages, and 16 different allowances paid to big shots, widening gap in civil servant salaries. Interesting piece here.
I think that for me, the thing that stood out about that story is that you have the highest paid civil servant, who I think is at PS level, I think, earning around 700 and something thousand. The lowest paid civil servant earns 7,000 shillings. This is 100 times less than the highest paid. And that's what they're trying to argue. There's a huge gap between the highest paid and the lowest paid. And I guess this is a kind of gap that makes the civil service, the public service dysfunctional. Because you have a situation where you have a mass of people who feel like they're completely misused by a small elite. So you have an elite within the public service that gets a lot of pay, gets a lot of allowances. Then you have this group who a lot of the times do a lot of the work, or most of the work, who actually get paid peanuts. And there is reason to, if you're going to have a public service that is not dysfunctional, you most probably want to figure out how to bridge those gaps. Do you need to bring the pay for the highest paid people down? Which I don't know how you're going, because somebody's going to argue and say it's illegal. You cannot reduce people's salaries. So then do you need to raise the salaries of the public servants up?
And if you're raising them, how are you financing that?
Plus, also there's been the argument of ghost workers and so there's I think there is need, because if you can get rid of ghost workers, if you can actually create a functional public service where you're in a job because it needs to get done, not because you've got a godfather who needs to place you somewhere. You must probably realize that the amount of money being spent already is enough to bridge that gap.
Okay. And the other day we watched the police vetting exercise, and now it's emerging from the story which continues on page 2 that police bosses still in office despite the sack, and that the Inspector General of Police has ignored orders from the vetting panel to send the officers home. That's what the Nation is saying, is reporting today.
The fact of the matter is that there's a certain public relations there's a way you get the impression that what is being done with this police reform vetting process is more of PR than actually getting the right people in or out. And this is a confirmation, because there's no need for people to get vetted and then a recommendation is made. That's like what happened with the judges. Recommendation is made and then that person continues being in office. It beats the whole purpose of why you are doing it. So it's sad, but I guess if they are doing it for PR
was achieved and the people are still in office.
Kenyans saw them being vetted, and nobody knows that they actually went back to office until media comes and highlights
and talks about it. Well, we'll follow that story and see what emerges in coming days. But page 3, that switch off that is imminent, at least next year, must happen.
The switch off has been imminent. It just keeps moving.
But now we've moved a little bit too much.
Now it's moved too much. We had the scare. Media had the scare. Was it in December, just before Christmas?
December, when everybody was at home.
It just keeps going. So it's now reaching a point where we will believe it will happen when it actually happens.
But the judge calling for that out of court kind of agreement settlement between the parties involved. Should that have been the way to go? Because we've had the council representing the media talk about and criticize the judgment by Majanja in that he rushed to make a ruling when there was no real emergency situation. There should have been more consultation and consideration of the issues at hand.
You see, just as Majanja had, it was, I mean, he didn't have any obligation to hold a ruling and allow conversation. A case has been taken to him in court. He decides to rule on it, and he makes a ruling. So what we're actually seeing is a situation where you're going to look, guys. I'm sure you're both stakeholders in his industry, as government and as media, why don't you just sit down and figure out a way of working this thing out?
Yeah.
Because the confusion that's been creeping on in the media industry around this, and I'm sure it's affecting a lot of long-term plans even within the media fraternity. I do think it's about time that now you have another 15 days, and it's interesting how the judges are now giving those kind of options. It reminds you of the Shebesh Kidero thing, guys.
And then you
sort this thing out. I mean, you don't have to bring everything to court. So that's the same thing that is happening again. The judge is saying, look, media, government, sit down on the table. I'm sure you can come up with something. Whether it will happen is, because sometimes I get the feeling that both sides have very hardline positions.
Right.
This is my irreducible minimum, that's my irreducible minimum. They don't look like they are going to negotiate.
Give up some ground.
Yeah.
Back page, Ministry to release 1 billion shillings bursary fund. So cash will be disbursed to needy students through the constituency fund committees. So we see a lot of, those kind of
I hope it happens. I actually hope that happens the way it has been planned, because a lot of the problems we have with the government release of funds like those is that it actually gets released but then doesn't go to the needy people. So you have a situation where the bursary money is being used either as political at local ground, is being used as a political payout for supporters of the whichever politicians are running that particular structure, or actually don't even get to the grassroots and end up disappearing somewhere in the process. So it's more important to see how they intend to make sure the 1 billion gets to the needy child. But that is a pretty good idea. Okay,
let's go to the Star now, and the headline: Raila meets rebel MPs, ODM cautions against defection. There have been those who threatened and said they would defect, and it's a story we've touched on before. Do you have any other thoughts to add on it? Because Raila finds himself, I spoke to his competitor for the for the party leader position, who argues that Raila, who argues that Raila should focus on 2017 and leave party politics to other people. But my question to him was, then as the party should convince him not to seek the position. He wants to be party leader.
First, I disagree. You can't focus in 2017 when you have 4 years. The thing about politics is that it's something you build up. You build up based on what you've done right now to what you do tomorrow to 2017. And maybe sometimes I get the impression part of the reason why ODM keeps struggling is that they focus on elections after every election. Right. So immediately after this election, you are now thinking about the next one.
Yeah.
And part of the work that ODM and CORD, which it's a primary member of CORD, should be thinking is about how do you show Kenyans that you're actually a government in waiting now.
Yeah, and
not thinking about 2017. So it's about handling opposition and things like that.
Yes.
The flip side about all this noise that is being made around ODM is that, they say in politics there's nothing like bad publicity. For the last 2 weeks and maybe all the way to the end of the elections, ODM is going to make headlines. ODM is what everybody is talking about, whether you're talking about it badly.
Yeah.
But now people know, the whole country knows there's a party called ODM that people are fighting about. That is good for ODM.
Yeah, and paints a picture of democracy, that there's all these discussions.
There's a struggle going on, there's a fight going on. And most probably knowing what I know about the party leader, I don't think he's complaining about because there's nothing really like negative press when you're running politics.
True.
This is showing that there's a big fight going on in ODM. So everybody's asking why. And that can only be good for ODM. So this is good PR for the party.
Yeah, and there's a headline picture: 7 kilo baby born in Busia. Now
that is a big child.
That is well, but big child. Happy bundle of joy.
Yes, yeah? That is a large bundle of joy.
Another story in the Star that continues on page 6. Oh my gosh. US pushes gay rights in Africa. I cannot get over what you just said. The United States has asked African states to repeal anti-gay laws, terming them discriminatory and a violation of human rights. It's a conversation we're seeing more and more African countries having. Some deciding to go the complete, opposite direction and say there's no way we're going to tolerate this. These people this and this should happen to them. Here in Kenya, we're seeing more protests by these groups coming out boldly to say they want recognition and respect.
First, I think there's a lot of money that has been put behind it looks like it's become the new big thing in the civil society world. It's taken precedence over HIV, over education, over health. And my problem is that the US needs to stop imagining that their culture applies everywhere.
Right.
You see, they have a culture that works for them, and that works for them. Somebody coined a name, homo nationalization. That seems to be what you can't keep speaking to other nations that have their own cultures, they have their own structures, and telling them that you must get this right. That is a conversation that Africa needs to have with itself about how you treat gays and lesbians. That is a conversation that Africa must have. You can't step outside because you've got your thing going on in your place and then come and tell me that you guys must stop mistreating. The people who are being mistreated are Africans, being mistreated by Africans. So that means it's a conversation that Africans must have within themselves. So I have a big problem with America taking that position on
and
Africa.
Trying to sort of like load it on everybody.
You're not going to force Africans to have a conversation about gays and lesbians just because you had one yourself.
You had one. They will have it when they
have to do it in our own way, in our own
time,
in our own culture structures.
Okay. Page 2, Ndongo in court to stop his arrest. So the CBK governor, there's the whole tendering question, and there was that arrest. He was the DPP director that it's okay, allowed for him to be charged, and now he's out to ensure he's not arrested.
I think it's a big step when you get where Kenya has gone to the point where DPPs actually instruct for central bank governors to get arrested. But the number 2, I think being central bank governor in this country is not, out of 6 central bank governors, I think we've had 4 of them had to step down before the end of their term. I mean, the numbers are not very good when you're a central bank governor. I think it's because there will always be something that goes wrong, and you will be the one left holding the baby on this one. And so I foresee a situation where he most probably will have to figure out how to step aside from this and have it going on, because it's like it's been zeroed in. There's a lot of things going on in central bank, and he seems to be the one who has been zeroed in as a person who has to answer. So, but this is progress. This is a lot more openness in terms of government having. However, this shows that there's people who are thinking about how to do this, and the DPP is actually coming out looking pretty his own person.
Like some independence.
Yes,
there,
an independence, which is a good thing, because that was one of the institutions that Kenyans had a problem with, that had been misused over and over again to protect status quo. Now you don't get any more status quo than being central bank governor. So if the DPP is going after the central bank governor, you get a feeling you can't fight too much. Of course, we don't know the reality, or we don't know what is going on about it, but the immediate perception is that that's progress.
Yes, and it's stories we're going to continue to watch. Page 6, finally in the Star, 70 most suspects charged in Shanzu, among other stories here. But this, in Mombasa, in the charging, we had some children who were arrested, some have been released. Do you see this at the end, even with these suspects that have been charged? Any headway? Or is it just one of those stories we see, people arrested, after 2 months you hear this and this happened, and then forgotten?
Costs, the problems we are seeing at the coast, the radicalization that's going on of young people, the fight between because what we're actually seeing is a conflict between older clerics and young Muslims. Personally, my controversial solution is that the coast needs to get its own political party. Because what we're actually seeing is a problem that has political roots. These are people who have grievances that they feel are not being aired and being addressed and being raised by the structures that they have. Ideally, when you can't raise your grievances in the normal channels, you now get into violence. Violence always comes from there.
The national government and the county government failing, because introducing a party of themselves is just worsening the problem in terms of then they are their own people with their own party trying to, you make bigger problem you're trying to resolve, the ethnicity, feeling that we are, we the coast people, we the Kikuyus, we the Luos.
This is the facts of the matter is that ideally that should not happen.
Yes.
But the reality is that it does happen. So we have a group of young disenfranchised Muslim men at the coast who believe that nobody is listening to us. So now, unless you give them a platform where they can actually speak, they will continue committing violence.
Okay, it can be handled that way. One would argue, why not listen to them?
But who is going to listen to them?
The county leadership.
This is the problem. The county leadership is working within a political structure. So remember, these guys elected this county leadership less than 10 months ago. The fact that they are causing the chaos they are causing now means they do not feel they've been listened to. And this is not the first time it has happened at the coast. Remember, this has been a recurrent issue even before county governments got into place. So yes, one of the ways to do it would be to actually get the county governments, the 5 counties at the coast, to sit down, the religious leaders to sit down. But then you see that the conflict is happening between within the Islam, Muslim religious community. It's not even happening outside, but it ends up affecting. You get a church burnt here, a Christian religious leader killed somewhere else. So these outbursts need to get managed, and for that to be managed, that what you're calling for, the conversation, the hearing, is actually a political process.
Okay.
And for that to happen,
and a political party would sort that out.
I have been thinking. I've been looking at this. A political party would raise the temperatures, but reduce the capacity for violence.
Okay.
Because what you'd actually have is people now agitating politically for the things that they're agitating for now violently.
Yeah.
So the temperatures will raise. But then what will happen is that you will dissipate the capacity to commit violence. Because now you can do a political demonstration. You can do a political memorandum. You force central government, you force county government to listen to you, because there's political ramifications if they don't listen to you.
If they don't listen.
Right now, there's no political ramification. You get 100 people, throw them into a court. After 2 months, they get released. See, so there's no political ramification. Now, what happens, how you get leaders to listen to you is creating political ramifications. How do you get political ramifications? By making it a political process.
Interesting.
That's my opinion.
That's your opinion. Finally, in the people, several stories we've already looked at. ODM split over Ababu. So Ababu...
Ababu is actually, I actually think he's done very well.
Yeah.
He's cut out a niche for himself during this fight, to the point where now ODM members do not believe he's a project of anyone.
Right.
He's been called names and fought against it, to the point now he's actually attracting support he would never have had in the first place.
All right. And another story there that also inside is revealed. Keen speak out on how successive regimes have concealed truth of his murder. And this just goes to remind Kenyans of the many, mysterious murders. There are many unanswered questions.
There are a lot of unanswered questions in this country. I hear that's how countries are built.
Yeah, and there's a funny one on page 3 in the People about the Obamas opt for quails during state dinner. Did you get into the quail?
No, I didn't get into the quail. I didn't get into the quail. I had people calling it a pyramid. Somebody else is complaining that somebody just felt jealous and started spoiling the business.
Yes.
But I think I'm sure there are people who are still making money from it.
Really?
I have
you eaten quail eggs?
No.
I haven't too. We need to try them out.
I think they look funny, but hey, that's
they do look funny.
That's
You're right. Thank you, Ngunjiru, for joining us this morning. Hope to see you again next week. Enjoy tomorrow. Make it big.
Yes.
Go big.
So now that you've said I need to make it
and
big,
I'm saying on national TV.
I'm sure I'm being watched, so I must make it as big as I can.
And I'm gonna mess it up for all my guests today, even the Reverend.
Clearly, you're on an agenda.
I'm on a mission right here. We're glad you're watching Morning Express. It is 7:02 a.m. We want to quickly have a look at how your roads are looking this morning, courtesy of my 3 routes. Sometimes mornings are very insane and crazy, but the normal situation is that there's traffic, especially at this time. Mombasa Road frees up after GM, only to snarl up again at Ole Sereni. Oh my, somebody says here it's not looking good. Lean is also talking about fender bend on Thika Road on the service lane just after Old Sop. Jogoo Road traffic from Makadara to Mudhurwa, heavy traffic there. You have been at a worse place when you fully appreciate the slow moving traffic on Langata Road. Awesome. So someone celebrating that it's moving at least slowly than when it's just on a standstill. Do not use motorcycle. 2 accidents in a span of 2 minutes. Have witnessed them right now. Somebody's talking about that. So always careful, even when they're just nearby, because quite a number of accidents with those the motorcycles. Magathi Road is clear on both sides. Traffic along Gong Road, but moving. Accident on Thika Road just after Githurai heading to town. Use service lane. Somebody advises. Ole Sereni again pops up here. And Thika Road jam Hadi Gidhu, and other updates as well. And as you get out of the house, keep us posted what's happening on the roads, any incidents, accidents, which we hope there will not be any, but tweet me at Sophia Wanuna and we can keep everybody informed and moving, hopefully. Stay with us. When we return, we're talking about the state of the church. It's going to be a very interesting conversation because numerous articles we've had here, even during press review, and the kind of stories that are emanating from the church very worrying and concerning. So who regulates these bodies? If I want to begin a church today, how do I go about that? And who is watching to see what's happening? People being taken advantage of, the crazy stories. You're being told you can pay 1,000 shillings to find out if your name is in the book of life. Really? And people are actually doing that. May the Lord help us all. We're coming back after this short break.